You're watching Simply Amish, and today we're diving into an Amish beginner's guide to preserving meat without refrigeration. Let's get started. For most of us, keeping meat fresh is as simple as tossing it in the fridge. But for the Amish, things aren't that easy, or at least they aren't meant to be. Their lifestyle is built around simplicity, tradition, and a deep-rooted belief in self-sufficiency. Electricity, many Amish communities choose to live without it, not because they don't know about modern technology, but because they believe it pulls them away from a life of discipline and hard work. This isn't just about avoiding convenience. The Amish prioritize community over individual comfort, and that means living off the land, working with their hands, and preserving food the same way their ancestors did. That includes meat, which is crucial for their diet, especially during long winters when farming isn't possible. But without electricity, they can't just rely on refrigeration to keep it from spoiling. Instead, they use techniques that have been around for centuries, methods that don't just preserve meat, but in many cases, make it taste even better. When you don't have a fridge, meat preservation isn't just about keeping food edible. It's about survival. The Amish use a mix of different techniques depending on the type of meat and how long they need it to last. Some methods work best for short-term storage, while others can keep meat good for years. Number 5, curing meat with salt. The simplest and most reliable way to keep meat from spoiling is salt. Salt curing has been used for thousands of years, long before refrigeration existed. It works by drawing moisture out of the meat, making it nearly impossible for bacteria to survive. Here's how the Amish do it. They start with large cuts of pork or beef, hams, shoulders, or even whole sides of meat. They rub it down with a thick layer of salt, sometimes mixed with brown sugar and spices to enhance the flavor. Then they let it sit for weeks, sometimes even months, in a cool, dry place. Over time, the salt penetrates the meat, preserving it from the inside out. The result? A firm, salty cut of meat that can be stored for months without refrigeration. Some Amish families hang their cured meat in a smokehouse for extra protection, while others store it in cellars or pantries wrapped in cloth. One of the biggest advantages of salt curing is that the meat doesn't just stay edible. It develops a rich, intense flavor. If you've ever had country ham or traditional prosciutto, you've tasted the result of this method. Number 4, smoking. Salt curing is effective, but smoking takes it a step further. It doesn't just preserve meat, it enhances its taste and protects it from insects and bacteria. The Amish use smokehouses, small wooden buildings where meat is hung from the ceiling and slowly smoked over hardwood like hickory, applewood, or maple. This process can take anywhere from a few days to several weeks, depending on how deeply they want the smoke to penetrate. The key to smoking as a preservation method is keeping the temperature low, usually between 100 and 150 degrees Fahrenheit. At these temperatures, the meat dries out slowly, reducing moisture while absorbing the smoky flavor. The smoke itself acts as a natural preservative, creating a protective layer that prevents bacteria and mold from forming. Smoked meats like ham, bacon, and sausages can last for months when stored properly. Some Amish families keep them hanging in the smokehouse year-round, cutting off pieces as needed. Others wrap them in cloth or wax paper and store them in cool, dry pantries. But smoking isn't just about practicality. It also creates some of the most flavorful meats you'll ever taste. The combination of salt, slow drying, and wood smoke results in deep, complex flavors that modern refrigeration just can't replicate. Hey, before we jump into the next tip, if you're enjoying this so far, give the video a like, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel for more content like this. It really helps out a lot. All right, let's keep going. Number 3, canning. Canning is one of the most effective ways the Amish store meat for long periods, sometimes for years. Unlike salt curing or smoking, which mainly preserve raw meat, canning fully cooks it first. The result is tender, ready-to-eat meat that requires no refrigeration. Here's how they do it. First, they cut the meat into chunks: beef, pork, chicken, or even wild game. The pieces are packed tightly into glass jars, often with broth, water, or rendered fat to keep the meat moist. Then the jars are sealed and placed in a pressure canner, a large metal pot designed to heat the jars to extremely high temperatures. The heat inside the canner kills bacteria, making the sealed jars completely shelf-stable. Once cooled, the jars are stored in root cellars or pantries, where they can last for several years without refrigeration. Canned meat is incredibly practical. It's already cooked, which means there's no need to spend hours preparing a meal. Just open a jar, heat it up, and it's ready to eat. This makes it especially useful during winter or when time is short. Some Amish families even can entire meals, adding potatoes, carrots, and seasonings so that all they have to do is pour the contents into a pot and warm it up. For people looking to reduce their dependence on modern food storage, Amish canning techniques are a game changer. It's one of the few ways to store fully cooked meat without any electricity. Number 2, lard preservation. Another method that might sound unusual today, but was extremely common before refrigeration, is storing meat in lard. This technique works by creating an oxygen-free environment where bacteria can't grow. The process is simple. The Amish cook cuts of meat, usually pork, until they're fully done, then pack them tightly into large crocks or jars. Next, they melt down pig fat, lard, and pour it over the meat, ensuring that it's completely submerged. Once the fat cools and solidifies, it forms an airtight seal, locking out air and bacteria. This method is especially useful for preserving fried or roasted pork. The meat stays incredibly tender and flavorful, absorbing some of the richness from the lard. And when it's time to eat, all they have to do is scoop out a piece and reheat it. Lard preserved meat can last for months, even a year or more, if stored in a cool place. And as an added bonus, the lard itself can be reused for cooking, adding flavor to everything from bread to vegetables. This technique is similar to the French tradition of duck confit, where duck meat is preserved in its own fat. The Amish, however, apply it to pork and other meats, keeping their food fresh without the need for refrigeration or artificial preservatives. Number 1, drying and jerky making. Long before refrigeration, people learned that removing moisture from meat could make it last for months, or even years. The Amish still use this technique today, making jerky and dried sausage to store for the long term. The process starts by cutting meat into thin strips. These strips are either air-dried in a well-ventilated area or slowly smoked over a low fire until they become tough and chewy. Because all the moisture is removed, bacteria have nothing to feed on, and the meat remains edible for a very long time. Properly dried jerky can last over a year without refrigeration. And because it's lightweight and easy to carry, it's perfect for taking on long trips or working in the fields. To add extra preservation power, the Amish often season their jerky with salt, pepper, and other natural preservatives like vinegar. Some even coat it in a thin layer of rendered fat for an extra barrier against moisture. If you've ever had beef jerky, then you've experienced this method firsthand. It's one of the easiest ways to preserve meat, and it's just as useful today as it was hundreds of years ago. It's easy to assume that meat preservation without refrigeration is a thing of the past, something only the Amish or survivalists care about. But in reality, these techniques are making a comeback. Why? For one, more people are becoming interested in self-sufficiency. With rising food costs, unpredictable weather, and concerns about food security, knowing how to store meat without relying on electricity is a valuable skill. Plus, many of these methods don't just preserve meat, they enhance it. Smoked meats have richer flavors. Salt-cured ham tastes deeper and more complex. Canned meats are tender and ready to eat in an instant. And then there's the question of what happens if the power goes out. If a storm knocks out electricity for days or weeks, a freezer full of meat is useless. But if you've got canned, smoked, or dried meat, you're good to go. The Amish have been preserving meat this way for generations. Not out of necessity, but because it's reliable. And maybe, just maybe, there's something we can learn from that.